It's Camargo from Bevan. Leon gets down. Over the top, Chella, variety Chella. Garcia, fake the cross shot, cuts across, and it's perfect. Up and finishing it off is Alejandro Diaz, who scores in his Vancouver debut. Terran Campbell can do no wrong. And the Spaniard makes them pay. Fisk. Up goes Beckford, bounces around, and it's in! Cavalry in stoppage time! And win this match by a 1-0 and go second in the Canadian Premier League table.
Canadian Premier League Newsroom, presented by Volkswagen. We're back. That was a pretty groovy intro. I enjoyed that, but we are here on a Monday night to recount the week that was in the Canadian Premier League. We had 6 games with 2 midweek last week, plus 4 pretty entertaining, interesting, at least for the most part, games across the weekend. And let's just jump right into bringing those results up. If you didn't catch every game, we had a couple of midweek games last week. Tuesday night, Halifax Wanderers beating Pacific FC, who are still the league leaders, 2-1 in a pretty entertaining and dramatic game. Halifax scoring goals from Massimo Ferrin and Callum Watson. Pacific getting one just at the end from Amir Didic, but it wasn't quite enough. And then in Calgary, Cavalry FC, a rare home defeat as Atletico Ottawa go into Spruce Meadows as they did last year. They win 2-0 with an Ollie Bassett penalty kick and a Jean-Aniel Assi goal. And then we move into the weekend, which was, another quartet of fascinating games, starting at York Lions Stadium on Friday night, a 0-0, which didn't have maybe a lot of highlights to speak of, but we will get into that game as we do all of them. On Saturday, our doubleheader was Cavalry beating the Halifax Wanderers at home to reverse that midweek loss and get back in the win column thanks to Dan Nimick's own goal very late. I was at Tim Hortons Field for Forge and Valour. It was a wet one, a very rainy one, a controversial one, as we'll also get to. But Forge getting a goal from Terran Campbell and Valour scoring a late equalizer from Clyde Chella. And then the weekend ending just yesterday as Atletico Ottawa won their 3rd straight game with a 3-1 win over Vancouver FC, thanks to Miguel Acosta, Gabriel Antonoro, and Carl Howarth. All right, before we dive into all of those games specifically, though, it is a World Cup week at the moment. If you're unaware, the Women's World Cup starts later this week, so I think we're going to start there. We're going to bring in our own Benedict Rhodes to chat a little bit about the Women's World Cup down in Australia and New Zealand, starting on Thursday. Canada Group B also starts on Thursday night. Technically Friday afternoon there in Australia, I think, but Canada will be taking on Nigeria in Melbourne. Benedict, you have been all over the coverage for the women's national team for a while, especially at our site. You've got plenty of stuff at campl.ca for people to read, and we all will throughout the tournament. But let's just start with you. Maybe bring up the schedule for Canada's group stage here, and we can take a look at it. And then just maybe talk about expectations. Nigeria, Ireland, Australia. That is not an easy group, right, Benedict? What are your expectations for this group stage?
Yeah, this kind of feels like the group of death. That's kind of a cliche, but I think that's a fair assessment of this group. Each team here has difference makers. Australia has Sam Kerr, who's arguably the best player in the world. Nigeria is a physical team. They have Asisat Ashawala as well from Barcelona, who can tear apart Canada's backline if she gets on form, and Ireland as well. Katie McCabe is one of the most entertaining players in the world on and off the pitch, and she should be full value in this tournament as well as Ireland play at the World Cup for the first time. And I think minimum expectations for Canada, I think, are to get out of the group. I think that anything else would be disappointing, but it certainly won't be easy. And that third game, Australia versus Canada, could very well decide first versus second, or potentially an upset, one of those teams not making it through to the next round.
Yeah, the Canada-Ireland game will be a split household in the O'Connor Clark home. That'll be fun. But yeah, as you mentioned, the expectation for Canada is always to get out of the group, at least at the very bare minimum, at a World Cup. They have designs on winning this tournament, though, right? They're the gold medalists from the Olympics. They're a very confident bunch. Benedict, we spoke about the squad itself last week, but what players do you need to see big tournaments from? What needs to go right for Bev Priestman in order for Canada to make a good run at this tournament?
Yeah, the key players, Keelan Sheridan, I think is going to be particularly important. She's one of the best goalkeepers in the world, but sometimes she's prone to maybe a little bit of a slip up, and that's something we've seen in the past. But I think if she's playing at her very best, I think there's no reason why she can't pull off a Stephanie Labe-esque sort of hero for Canada in the tournament, and also the center backs. Canada thrives on defending, and Kadisha Buchanan, Vanessa Gilles, Shalina Zadorsky can be the sort of rotation of the three center backs, and if they're at their very best as well, there's no reason why Canada can't keep a clean sheet against any of these teams. And when you do that, you'll always give yourself a chance to win. But at the same time, goals from open play have been an issue for this team for a while now, and it'll be interesting to see who starts up top. I think it'll probably be Jordan Heidema to start the tournament, but whoever Bev Priestman starts up there will have to be on form and put some goals in the back of the net if Canada want to advance.
Yeah, that's the thing for me. I mean, it's been kind of the case with this Canada team for a while, really since even before maybe that Olympic tournament. They're an incredible defensive team, but we just aren't quite sure where the goals are coming from in open play. They did win a gold medal in Tokyo without scoring a whole lot from open play, but I think at a World Cup where the atmosphere will be a little bit more intense, some of the teams will be very up for it. I think there's going to be some pressure on his team to score some goals. Benedict, speaking of teams that there's pressure on though at this World Cup, I think across the board we can definitely say that the field has never been stronger at a Women's World Cup. There's plenty of teams, including Canada, that you could see going deep, going to the final, winning this World Cup. But for you, is it still the Americans' title to lose?
I think it probably is, as much as that kind of pains me to say that. The long-standing kind of theory has been that the United States could field two teams and potentially have both teams meet in the final. They're so deep, they have so much talent. This is I think their tournament to lose, and for them, not winning the whole thing would be a big failure for them. And I think that's the kind of place every national team wants to be. And when you have those expectations on you, they are hard to live up to. But I think they do continue to drive you forward. And I think any team that other than the United States winning would be to some extent an upset.
I think so too. But just as I kind of hinted there are other teams that feel that they can win this and certainly can. Maybe just give us a quick run through of who some of the other contenders other than Canada and the United States that people are probably going to get to know and be pretty entertained watching over the next couple of weeks in Australia.
Yeah, I mean, I think England, the Euros champions, of course. I'm not biased when I say that, but I think Canada is going to have to win their group, assuming England wins their group, to avoid each other in the round of 16. I think that could be a huge upset if one of them goes out that early. And there's other teams as well. Germany, the Euros runners-up, have always been strong. Spain, missing some of their key players, but they'll be good as well. And don't rule out some of the more technical teams like Japan, for example, who maybe don't have the biggest names and the biggest stars, but they could be a dark horse to go all the way. And I'd say the same thing for the host Australia as well.
Yeah, certainly very exciting, a lot of fun, and I know that the path to the final for Canada would be very difficult. However, if I'm reading this right, I'm pretty sure that Group B and Group E are on opposite sides of the bracket. So if they are to get a matchup with those rivals, the United States, it would have to be in the final, which would be tremendous. That would be a lot of fun. Anyway, stay tuned to the CPL website and everywhere else for plenty of coverage of the Women's World Cup, as we'll have over the next few weeks. And I'm personally really excited. It's always exciting to watch a World Cup, and to especially watch a Canadian team at the World Cup will be very special. But let's go back into our main mandate here at the CPL Newsroom, and we'll go back home to Canada, to the CPL. And we are going to start, Benny, with your game this week, which was just yesterday, Atletico Ottawa and Vancouver. And if we roll the highlights here, this has been a big week for Ottawa, who obviously won in Calgary on Wednesday and then come home and win pretty convincingly against a Vancouver side that they've played well against this year. Just start by telling me what you liked about this game and give it a rating out of 10 for how compelling it was to you.
I'll give it a 7.5. I think there are a lot of storylines coming into this game that were important. Like can Vancouver come off the bottom of the table? Can Ottawa make it a 9-point week, which they were able to do? And some big players coming back into the CPL. I know Alejandro Diaz is for my money the best attacker this league has ever had, and comes back, and if you're watching on YouTube, you just saw it there. He scores on his Vancouver FC debut, and I think we always kind of expected. No, not expected, but kind of thought it was a possibility that this would happen, and he lived up to the billing. And this is a game where both teams had their chances. Vancouver scored early in the second half to make it interesting, but Ottawa were just relentless, and then they came away with the 3 points in the end.
They certainly did, and especially thanks to a couple of their substitutes late, which were pretty incredible pieces of coaching, I think, from Carlos Gonzalez, who identified where they could exploit Vancouver, who were maybe tiring a little bit, and they found a way to do it in front of a pretty boisterous TD Place, as it often is. Let's go back there and just get the thoughts of one of their goal scorers, Gabriel Antonoro, who spoke a little bit about what it means to win at home.
The first thing is about winning. Like winning at home feels better than winning away. And my goal, I've been waiting for this. I've been waiting. Just playing at home feels more special. And it was really a special feeling, like joy and happiness. And I was very happy. It means a lot.
And after Atletico Ottawa struggled at home early in the season, and even at times last season, they have been red hot in Ottawa in the last few weeks. They're red hot in general, but don't look now. They are up into the playoff spots, and that's maybe a testament to how long a football season is and how close the table is right now. Let's just get into Ottawa then and how they've been playing recently. Benny, you've watched a lot of them. It's a perfect July so far. It's been 3 games, as we've said, but what has impressed you about the way that they've been playing lately?
Yeah, Carlos Gonzalez spoke with the same. Sort of said they've been a more complete team. Like everything is kind of clicking at the moment, whether it's the goal scorers, putting the ball in the net, which sometimes they struggle to do, or the defenders, sort of cutting down on the sort of sloppy mistakes. I guess that I think he called them stupid mistakes earlier in the season, where they're just really preventable goals, and they managed to sort of tighten those up, I guess, these last few games. And I think playing 3 games in a week is difficult, but when you're playing in the way that they're playing right now, on good form and full of confidence, I think they almost sort of embrace that, playing back to back 3 games in 8 days, and getting 9 points is obviously impressive. That's 3 of their 6 wins on the entire season, and in the blink of an eye, they went from 8th to 4th, so everything's kind of going right for Carlos Gonzalez's team at the moment. But there's a lot of football still to be played.
There is a lot of football still to be played. I think there's a lot of interesting things about the way Ottawa played in this game. Miguel Acosta had a fantastic week. He scores his goal playing at left back because of some other injuries with Tissot and Sacco not available to go. He's just a fantastic player, and he can really play anywhere in defense or in midfield. I think we're starting to see just why Ottawa were so excited to bring Alberto Zapater into the squad. He was phenomenal, and he's just so calm, and he's one of those. It's sometimes a cliche when an older midfielder comes into a team like this, but he really is kind of that calming presence and that clever player who can pick out the passes that the rest of the field can't really see. And then there's plenty of other shout outs. We've spoken about Antonoro. I think Carl Howarth has had a really good game and a good few weeks when he's been able to get on the pitch, which is always good. For the last word on Ottawa, though, let's go back to TD Place again. Let's hear from Carlos Gonzalez, who will maybe remind us that it is a very long season and not a sprint.
In the first games, we were wibbling a little bit. We were not as solid. Now, adding to that, of course, the team has a lot of potential offensively. I think that we have very clear ideas of how to attack, and I think that the team is little by little being more complete. I think I remember that probably we are the second team with more goals in the CPL after Pacific. So a lot of credit to what the players are doing, a lot of credit of the work that we've done in these months, and yeah, that's it. We have to continue because this doesn't stop here. In a week we play against Halifax, and this league we know that is so equal that if you do 2 bad games, you're going to return back to the position that you don't want to be. So yeah, let's stay humble. Let's say that now we are in a position that we wanted to be in, and continue working with more energy than ever, because now the things are going in the right way.
One of the first words he said there was wibbling, which I don't think is a word. But other than that, very wise and sage advice from Carlos Gonzalez, because he's right. If you take your foot on the gas or off the gas because you've had a good week, you can find yourself right back at the bottom of the table very quickly in this league. But on the other side of the coin, you can find yourself shooting up it if you keep the accelerator down and you continue racking up results. Let's go to Vancouver, though. Benedict, who have had a bit of a tough time of late. They've been fighting it. They're obviously an expansion team with a very, very young squad who obviously deserve a lot of credit for how far they've come so far. Let's first, before I get your thoughts, let's go back there and hear Afshin Goppi's thoughts on that team, because I think that this is a difficult moment for the team in the season.
We saw that Diaz had one good service and he stuck it in the back of the net, and we saw Renan's quality with his shot from distance and his ability to control the game, win duels, play simple balls out of the midfield. So I'm not worried about those two. It's more about my own players integrating with them, and that's the process that sometimes you can't cheat, but we don't have time. We have to get it right as fast as possible. So that's my responsibility and my job to challenge them to be as quick as possible a team.
Don't have time, got to get it right as quickly as possible. And he's right. But as Afshin mentioned there, some positives for Vancouver being that I think since the last time we spoke on this show, they've made two big signings, and that's Alejandro Diaz coming back, who we all know, unbelievable goal scorer, does it in his first game, and Renan Garcia, who's very experienced veteran midfielder, been all over the world. Bit of a surprise signing there in Vancouver, who is a very interesting character, and I think we saw the quality of both in this game. Benedict, tell me what you made of their two debuts, and otherwise what sort of stood out to you. I know it's a 3-1 loss, but stood out to you in a more positive sense from Vancouver's performance here. Yeah,
as you said, and Afshin said, one chance and one goal for Alejandro Diaz. That's what he does. That's what he's been brought in to do, is to take advantage of the moments he does get. And if he can be that lethal goal scorer that Sean Hundle scored a lot of goals, but Alejandro Diaz is just different gravy. He's one of the best players this league has ever had. And Renan Garcia, he looks like a composed, I guess, midfielder. He can play out of the midfield. He can take shots from distance. He hit the crossbar, I think 4 or 5 minutes into this game. He played the cross in for Diaz from deep midfield after Ottawa kind of expected him to shoot. So he's got a bit of everything about him. And I think, as Asher said, as soon as they sort of get more rhythm, I guess, with their teammates, and the sort of chemistry starts to build up even more, I think they have a potential to be two major signings, and really turn this team around potentially. And after Shigoppi said before the game, they want a new Vancouver FC in the second half of this season, completely different from the first half. And if those two can get going and the teammates around them can elevate their levels a little bit as well, I think there is a potential for that.
Yeah, I think so, and I think there's definitely a lot of value in the fact that they're having somebody who knows this league so well in Alejandro Diaz, and somebody who knows football as it's played all over the globe, as well as Renan Garcia, coming into this lineup, which has been so young. Definitely the youngest team in the league, especially with the way that they've lined up the last few months in defense with younger players like James Cameron and Anthony White and so on, all Tyler Crawford as well, getting into that squad. Having that kind of experience in the locker room, I think, will only do wonders for not just the team this year, but for those players as they really embark on their professional careers. All right, these teams back in action next weekend. Benny, do you want to let us know where both of these two sides will be when we see them next?
Yeah, Ottawa's, as you mentioned, going to be playing in Halifax, and Vancouver going to be at home, and they are playing Cavalry FC.
I had it written down here that I had it written down, but I put you on the spot just to see. Cavalry going to Vancouver for the first time since that home opener in Langley, where it was a dramatic and entertaining day. Anyway, Benedict, we will have you back at the end of the show when we go through a few of our mid-season awards picks. But for now, we're going to make a substitution of Mr. Rhodes, and we're going to bring in Mr. Mitchell Tierney, who will be with us here to break down two of our games, the first of which being a night game at York Lions Stadium. And if we can roll the highlights for this one, York 0, Pacific FC 0. Mitchell, before I ask you for your rating, I want to remind you that our high ratings are only credible if we are honest with ourselves with some of the games that aren't as deserving of a 7 or 8. So out of 10?
Yeah, I'll go with a league low or a season low, I believe, 3 out of 10. Okay. Because really this was a match where two teams just kind of nullified each other's strengths for the better part of 90 minutes. I think these are two sides that are very, very good in transition in particular. And that meant, they just made a lot of passes that connected with teammates and didn't necessarily put each other in any dangerous positions over the course of 90 minutes. Pacific, they grew into it a little bit, as they tend to do. And Nico Giantsopoulos was solid in net late in the match. Gennaro Daniels' footing was not so solid on a late chance. It was probably the only real big chance of the game. But otherwise, in the end, I think 0-0 was a fair result for a match that I think ultimately will be rather forgettable in the grand scheme of things for both teams.
Yeah, I think so. And obviously we will shout out Nico Giantsopoulos, as Thomas has asked us to in the chat. He is in the team of the week. He had a clean sheet, which was well-deserved. But I think it seems that when these teams play each other, they are always kind of at a bit of a stalemate. There seems to be a lot of draws between these teams, or when they're not draws, they're wide open and one team really takes it over, as I think Pacific did earlier this year. But a lot of draws, a lot of kind of chess matches between Martin Nash and James Merriman. Let's start, though, with Martin Nash, because we're going to start with York. So let's just go and hear his thoughts before we get yours, Mitchell.
Yeah, I thought we had a real good start. We had a couple chances, half chances early, which you want to put one away and settle in. I thought we controlled the tempo really well. First half had controlled transition, which is big against them. And then second half, their changes, the guys they brought on, changed the game a little bit. I thought we saw the game out pretty well. They had two good chances. Nico made two good saves. But, I'm pleased with the effort and the performance. A good bounce back from last week where our effort levels, for whatever reason, were low. And we went to work this week, and I thought we were better tactically, better defensively, created more, just didn't hit the target. I think one shot on target, which is frustrating when we got into some good areas.
Just didn't hit the target, and that's been a problem at times for York this year. But they've been fighting it a little bit lately, Mitchell. But to bounce back from a 4-0 loss at home to Forge, does this for you feel like a point that they're maybe happy with, or a missed opportunity against the league leaders to get a much needed win?
Yeah, I think in this league it should always be seen as a missed opportunity if you don't get all 3 points at home, especially given their home record this season. I think they're now last in the league in terms of points per game at home. And I do think there are some positives, like Martin Nash said, in the way they played in the first half. They did a great job of playing through that Pacific press that can be really lethal if you're, not making smart passes through it. But, they have the double midfield pivot, a Lou drop back at times. Then maybe you don't have the numbers, though, going forward, which was obviously an issue for both teams in that first half. But that was likable. And obviously, Nico keeping them in the game late. They lost 1-0 in a late Sean Young goal last time they played Pacific. So right. that was a positive that they, didn't concede late. But I think overall, yes, good response. But at the same time, they're running out of home games to pick up points in. So that remains to be seen.
Your dog has opinions as well.
Yeah, my dog is not happy.
But no late Sean Young goal for this game because he was suspended, unfortunately, as was for York, Austin Ricci and Mo Babuli. So maybe that's part of the reason there's a little bit of attacking bite missing at times. But for the last word on York, before we go and speak about Pacific, let's go back there and hear Max Ferrari's take on that game.
We started off really good. First 3 minutes, I think it was, we had 2 or 3 chances. And going into the game, everyone agreed that it was kind of that bounce back to show everyone that what team we are. And I think the boys did that well. Obviously, we thought we did really well in the first half. Probably thought we should have been up 1 or 2. But I think the guys did really well to hang on at the end, especially when Pacific started making subs. And you can tell some of our guys were tired, but I think we held on. We stayed together, which was the most important thing, and we held on to a result that we can be happy about and we can build on.
Something that they can build on, I think, for sure. But let's go to Pacific, the league leaders, who are in first place still, but I think winless in their last 4 now, which is maybe a little bit of an early sign of concern. Mitchell, are you concerned about them? What did you see from Pacific in this game?
I'm not overly concerned because there are a pretty unique set of circumstances in terms of the travel they've had to go through over the last couple of weeks. Going to both coasts in less than a week, and then to Ontario for an away match. That's never easy. And, kind of in response to that, they rotated a lot of their players. They got what you might think is a last look at some guys before they, as James Merriman has said, kind of dial down their starting 11 and find more consistency in their lineup. They're hoping over the final stretch. So there were some things there were some things that obviously, kind of contributed to this that were pretty clear. The big concern for them remains the slow starts. Even in this one, no one really looked like they were going to score in this match, but so they don't allow the first goal, but they did start out quite slow again and only really grew into it once Salouf and Kunle Dadalou came off the bench at halftime. So that remains a concern, especially since that was kind of their point of emphasis going into the match. But on an overall level, I don't think there's any reason to be too concerned until they start dropping more of these points in, more conducive settings to winning matches.
Yeah. Again, they're still in first place for a reason. They don't seem overly concerned either. The slow starts are a concern for me, but again, it's very strange that I think, or perhaps by design, that Eamon Salouf has really maybe embraced in certain weeks being this difference maker off the bench. Mm-hmm. He's kind of that explosive energy who comes into a game late and really changes a game. I don't know how you feel about this, Mitchell, having kind of seen him do that live. Do you think that that's the best way to use him at the moment, or is it maybe a matter of managing his minutes and then later in the season you're able to bring him on for a 60-minute shift at the start of the game and he can do that same thing over a longer period?
Yeah, I think you want him to start the match again, especially when you're not starting matches very well. You'd like to have that kind of injection of energy and talent and, the full package that Eamon Salouf's really brought this season from the start. So, yeah, I think long-term, you obviously want that. But at the same time, I do think it is smart to, this isn't a player maybe that can hold that over 90 minutes. No one can play with that kind of electricity over 90 minutes. So it is smart to manage his minutes and make sure, he is healthy down the stretch in these important games. But yeah, I do think you want a player like that from the start.
Yeah, and obviously lots of options at Pacific to continue rotating. And as you said, James Merriman probably still trying to pare down who that best 11 is going to be come playoff time. All right, up next for these teams, though, I pretty sure Pacific are back home next Friday night where they're hosting Forge, and York will be on the road in Winnipeg on Sunday, I think, which is always a difficult fixture. Am I right? Did I get it right? Do I have it written down here anyway?
You passed the test. You get a good mid-season grade then.
It was an open book test. I have it open next to me. But anyway, from York Lions Stadium, we're going to head across the GTA to Hamilton, where both of us were on Saturday night for a game that I think miraculously did not have a weather delay. I was really scared of it. The rain really started coming down in the second half, but mercifully we were spared the thunder and lightning for long enough to get the full 90 minutes in. And if we roll the highlights here, it was pretty entertaining 1-1 draw for me. I'd probably give it 7.5 out of 10, maybe a 7 if we're giving 7.5 to the Ottawa game. But it had a little bit of everything. It had some good football in both halves from Forge. We had some good chances, some of that pretty classic Valour defending that they seem to always pull out of the box against Forge and really frustrate them. But a draw, I don't think either team is particularly happy with it. It keeps both teams pretty stagnant in the table. Mitchell, you were there just from your vantage point. What did you make of this experience and enjoying this game?
Yeah, I mean, the level of rain that happened in the second half, always adds a bit of a chaotic factor to any game. It was pretty impressive how many Forge supporters just donned the ponchos and got back out there in the rain, and like the noise was still excellent. Like I love the vibes of just, okay, we're already wet, let's just enjoy this. And obviously it wasn't, it was a nice summer rain, so it wasn't overly cold, but yeah, I mean, it made for a great second half, a lot of twists and turns as you'll see on the YouTube highlights with Valour equalizing late, and the first points that Forge have dropped from a winning position this season, which will be extra disappointing for the hosts because they probably played their best match of the season the week before, and we're hoping to ride the momentum of beating York 4-0. So that was, the hosts will probably be more disappointed, but like you said, I think both teams were really looking for 3 points and just got 1.
Yeah, the hosts are certainly more disappointed, and we will get to them in a second. Also, you stole my line about Forge dropping points from winning positions, and I know you stole my line because it's in the rundown here. But let's start with Valour, who come out in a different look in this game. I don't think we've seen them play a back three very often, but they come out in that sort of 3-4-3, which is interesting, except it doesn't really go to plan because unfortunately Matteo De Brienne goes down to injury with it looked like an ankle or a calf thing in the first half, I think about 15 minutes in. So Iskander Mizugi comes in and plays that left wing back role. And then just before halftime, another star for that team, key player Diego Gutierrez goes down. And that means Clyde Chella has to come into the game at center back. Dante Campbell goes further forward into midfield. Chella would end up having quite the impact on this game. But before we break down Valour and what they did, let's go back and hear what Phil Dos Santos, their head coach, had to say.
I think that's the best thing of today. It's the fight that the guys had, looking to get back. It's, we've had our fair share of issues finding the back of the net, and then you go down a goal and the mountain could seem very high to climb, and we were able to dig in and fight and get the goal. So that's the best thing of today. I think that the team, we set up differently. I think for us it was important to try and attack with speed, with players a little bit more central and close the spaces that Forge like to attack. And we did that well for a good part of the game. I just felt that there was something else in us. I felt that we had a chance to go and find the first goal, and then when we opened up a little bit more, we concede. So it was good to get the goal back.
Yeah, he'll definitely be happy to get that goal from a set piece and get out of Hamilton with a point. But as Phil said, the game really opened up in the second half, right, Mitchell? When the rain starts coming down and maybe Forge are getting a little bit more frustrated and starting to look for those attacking spaces. The game maybe took on a bit of a different energy when they came out for the second half.
Yeah. No, I think certainly. And, I think obviously Forge were really keen on getting those 3 points because they were important to them. Those injuries are always going to make a difference to players of quality. But, one thing I like from Valour is one of the stories of their season so far, I think, has been this impressive resilience to earn points when there's been just so many injuries of different levels for them this season. And just to be able to get another point against such a good team at home was very impressive. At the same time, over the course of an entire season, that's clearly not a recipe for success. And, they can't seem to ever find a consistent playing style or playing like squad, because there's always someone out or someone missing. And that's a continued issue. And it's exciting to see the back three, because that's something we've wanted to see for a while. But if you don't have De Brienne, it's maybe not quite as effective. So we'll see how these guys are health-wise. But I think overall a better point for them. But still some concerns coming out of this.
Yeah, and obviously fingers crossed for Matteo. But that Valour resolve and determination. I mean, Clyde Chella comes into that game to play, probably more than he was expecting to in that game, if at all. He has to watch the ball go over his head for the first Forge goal, but then he is the one who shakes off his marker and kind of climbs over Rezat Rama to score that equalizing goal. There is fight in this team. They're a pretty gritty team, this Valour side. So let's go back there and hear Clyde Chella's own thoughts.
It was a nice moment, a little bit bittersweet. I wanted to kind of make up on my previous error. But I think, like Coach said, I think we got a bunch of dogs on this team. And it feels like every time we have a big mountain, the bigger the mountain, the more we climb. So I'm really proud of the guys. And it was just next man up, next game up, next minute up.
Bunch of dogs in his team. The bigger the mountain, the more they climb. That's all good stuff from Clyde Chella, who obviously we can't forget is a former Forge player. He was there for a few years, and to get his first goal with Valour, at Tim Hortons Field has got to be a pretty fun moment for him as well. I think I saw some of his family around before the game wearing his jersey, so that would have been a special moment. So moving on to Forge, though, before we get into how they played or the tactics or anything like that, we're going to start by just hearing Bobby Smirniotis and his opening remarks for this game, and then we'll break that down ourselves and we'll get into it. Let's just roll the clip. Let's hear what Bobby had to say.
I thought, we're in control of the match for the most part. Created some good opportunities in the first half. Had a lot of good flow. Just sometimes maybe rush things, but we're not in danger. Second half, I thought again we're good. Somewhere around the 60th minute, we've scored a goal. I'm not sure if anyone in this room can tell me why it's not a goal. So I see a lot of heads nodding, so we all know it's a goal.
Yeah, so 55th minute, I think it's Kyle Becker comes in off the right side, puts it off the post, it comes back into the 6-yard box, and I think Chouanier puts it at the feet of Terran Campbell. It's immediately flagged down, but I think a lot of us, even in real time and then certainly on replay, can see that Guillaume Pianelli is playing Terran Campbell onside from a little bit further behind. I don't know. I don't know what to say about this one, Mitchell, other than it was onside and Forge were denied a goal that would have won them this game. Obviously, a lot of credit to them to pick themselves up after this and to go score pretty quickly again, as they seem to do this year. They seem to score after a little bit of adversity pretty quickly, but I'm not sure where exactly you were sitting to watch this, but it looked onside, right?
Oh yeah, I think it was definitely onside, and obviously disappointing because this has seemed to happen to Forge a few different times this season, where it's kind of been the talking point of the post game is a decision. But for me, this is another game where they let it be close enough that a decision changes the outcome of the match. And you look over at the Ottawa Vancouver game where Ollie Bassett pretty clearly onside on a play where he passes to Sam Salter. That's a footnote in that game because they go on to win by multiple goals. That hasn't happened enough for Forge, and the margins have been so small for them this season when they've been winning. That you leave it up to chance for a moment like this to change a match. And Bobby Smirniotis always says goals are the hardest thing to do, and he's got a good point in that. But at the same time, if you're a team of Forge's caliber, you want to be winning by multiple goals, and that just hasn't been happening this season. So that's the biggest concern for me from them this year, especially when Pacific's been dropping points like crazy lately, and they could have kind of climbed up the table a little bit over the last little bit.
That's true. It's a great point. Certainly a frustrating moment, and one that Forge won't forget very quickly. One that they're very much right to be aggrieved by. But let's just go into how they did play in this game, because I think that's maybe a positive thing for me. For them, I think they have started to look a little bit more like themselves. They certainly did against York last week. I think in this game they looked quite good and quite dangerous again. I think that they had coped with the conditions in the second half a lot better than Valour did.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not necessarily because they... Hello to the dog again. That's not necessarily because of a conscious attempt to play into the conditions. Obviously, that's part of it as well. But I think that the way that they play, they keep the ball on the ground. They're not putting the ball at the mercy of the wind as much as Valour might. I think that was very conducive to maybe being able to be a little more dangerous. The ball moves very quickly along the turf in the rain at Tim Hortons Field, and I think they obviously know that. And they made very good use of that with their very quick and quite aggressive passing forward to make those runs and to get the ball up quickly. So just from your vantage point again, Mitchell, what did you think of Forge and maybe how they were starting to get into those spaces later into that game?
Yeah, well, for one thing, I really like how important it's been that Alessandro Hojabrapor has been back, and I think that's been so important for getting those players slightly further forward. So yeah, I think that's obviously been an important thing for them. And I mean, I just love what we've seen from Terran Campbell this year and over the last little bit in terms of his determination. And again, once he gets a goal ruled off, he goes right back. He's the first person. their goal comes off really a better understanding of the bounce on that field and reacting to that. So, I think Forge, like you said, adapted better to the conditions, and that is a positive for them. Although, obviously, again, just a single point.
Yep, a single point for each. Both of these teams next week taking on the two teams from the last game we just talked about. Forge going out west to Pacific for what will be a really, really interesting game, and a game that both teams will be pretty desperate to win, I think. Very, very entertaining on Friday night. And then Valour, hosting York in Winnipeg to close out the weekend on Sunday. Mitch, again, we will have you back at the end of the show. I hope you're cooking up some terrible predictions that we will all dunk on you for. I'll probably your dog can also make predictions. I hope that nice. I hope you don't have your picks stolen. But anyway, we will talk to you later as we move on to our fourth game of the weekend, and that will be broken down for us by Alexandre Gonke-Ruzik, who was our correspondent for Cavalry versus Halifax. AGR, how you doing?
Good to be on the show a little later time, but can't complain.
Yeah, we're doing the evening show this week for a litany of reasons. But if we play the Cavalry Halifax highlights, AGR, in your analysis, you called this a strong tactical battle, as Cavalry obviously getting that late winner courtesy of unfortunately Dan Nimick's head. But what did you like about this game, AGR, and what's maybe your rating out of 10?
Yeah, I'd say this was probably closer to a 6-7. I think this was a good battle for those who prefer it. Maybe, lacking a bit of finish, but I think that's what made it entertaining. It was a really chaotic game in the regard of, both teams had a clear identity of how they wanted to go at each other. Halifax, as usual, is a bit more on the ball and trying to, play down the middle. And then for Cavalry was go down the flanks and really try to dominate the wide areas. And they both had chances. Halifax hit a post, had a chance cleared off the line. So did Cavalry. And then in the end, Cavalry knocked, and then eventually the door broke down. And for them, it was a bit of vindication. They kind of mentioned it after the game, because in midweek against Ottawa, they had a similarly, grindy game where it was 0-0 for most of it. Ottawa was pushing, Cavalry were pushing, but in the end, Ottawa kind of got that first lick, and then they ended up winning 2-0, and Cavalry felt that they maybe let it get away. Well, this time they managed to get that one in at the end. And I think the big theme that I heard a few times from Ben Fisk and Tommy Wheeldon Jr. after the game was, doesn't matter how, just matters that they got the goal in the end and got the win that they felt they deserved.
Yeah, that's certainly all that will be remembered by the standings in a few months at the end of the season is that Cavalry got all 3 points, and Halifax, unfortunately for them, didn't get any of them. AGR, as you mentioned, this is a big game for Cavalry to get back in the win column after losing frustratingly to Ottawa midweek. Just in terms of the way that they played, and as you said, you feel like maybe they deserved to win and they got that reward at the end. Just what stood out to you about the way that Cavalry was playing here?
Yeah, I think it was just a relentless performance, and I think you can kind of see why they're so good at home and why it was, they rarely lose at home. That Ottawa loss was just their, third loss in the last 12 months, all to Ottawa, funnily enough. So maybe a bit of a bogey team in that regard at Atco Field. But it was something where they want to be dominant at home. And what's fun to watch with Cavalry at home is they play that way. They play with this conviction. They play with this energy. It was, very clear the way they kept funneling the ball to wide areas, especially Fraser Aird had a very strong game with his delivery. Ben Fisk as well. Good to see him back starting after all the injuries he's dealt with. And it was there was a very clear identity in how they play. And I think that's, it could be commended that sometimes in a league where you've played each other so many times, you can get a bit focused in the other opponents and matchups. And no, Cavalry's like, we're going to play our way. We're going to play our 3-4-2-1 off the or on the ball, and we're going to play, our 4-2, 2-2-2, I guess you could say, off the ball. And just they're very clear in the identity and at home that you can commend them for that, and end up working as they knew what they were doing out there.
Yeah, and certainly more to come in Calgary as well, with William Akio set to join up with that attacking group as well, which will be fascinating to see how they manage to integrate him, who's a very, very dynamic and entertaining forward. But we've spoken a lot in the last couple of minutes, so let's hear from somebody else on Cavalry, and let's go back to Spruce Meadows and hear from their coach, Tommy Wheeldon Jr.
Doesn't matter how, just matters how many you score more than the opposition, and that was us today. So, we knew we could create something. Off Ethan went up there to cause a problem. We know in Fraser and Ben, we could see that Halifax were having tired legs and there was going to be something. And, Leon Apgood works a lot on our attacking set plays, and got to give credit to him to, Ben Fisk has put in a terrific ball. And, I've been there myself where you just weather in a storm and, we took the deflection. But it's nice to have a bit of luck go our way in those moments too.
It's another set piece for Cavalry as well. They've always been fantastic in that area of the game, especially recently with Leon Hapgood running those, as Tommy mentioned, and plenty of cool performances for the Cavs in this game. Fraser Aird's in the team of the week. Ben Fisk, really close, nearly got in there, but ultimately didn't quite make the cut. But let's hear from Ben Fisk as well, because I think he did have a hell of a game for Cavalry.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think a bit of relief more than anything, but we definitely created enough chances to win, in a much easier fashion today. I think we made it a little hard on ourselves, but again, so special scoring a winner in the last part of the game in front of the foot soldiers there. So honestly, you have to be out there to feel what it's like. It's incredible.
For Halifax, though, it's a bit of a heartbreaker. I think AGR, especially after how great a moment it was for them on Tuesday when they beat Pacific in that crazy fog game that I think we all loved watching. It was real entertaining moment, interesting moment, but they took Cavalry right to the wire here, and it's an own goal right at the end that dooms them. What did you make of Halifax, not only in this game, but the way that they've kind of been playing recently?
Yeah, it was kind of unfortunate for them, especially on the road, because it feels like the shoe doesn't necessarily fit for them in terms of their road record, if that makes sense. As in, like, you look, they're the only team not to win on the road yet. They're still hunting it down. They've played the most road games as well, right? So they've had that extra opportunity, but they've just been so unfortunate in these games where they have these good performances, and it just continues to be these moments that hurt them, where, a set piece like this, or, there's countless other examples you can go across where they were close to getting a draw or a win or something like that. It just, these sorts of moments get them, because it was a solid performance. Like, on the ball, they got a lot more involved than they did a week prior against Vancouver. Lorenzo Caligari had another great game, just playing between the lines, getting on the ball. Their defenders as well were really stepped up, and it was kind of ironic that Nimick scored the own goal, because it felt like, they'd actually done well to defend a lot of the Cavalry wide service that was coming in, and made some key blocks. So overall, I'd say it was a good performance. Really, just what hurt them was a lack of just final third quality, and that's kind of been something that you mentioned, over the last while. This uptick in form has been this ability to take advantage of their chances that they're creating, and and the fact they only allowed one goal against Cavalry. If they were able to get a goal or two, they could have easily got more of this game, and we've seen that a lot lately. And I think what this game highlighted was also how key Thiago Coimbra has quietly become to their attack, because him being out injured, they kind of missed a bit of that spark, a bit of that energy. And Joao Morelli helped a lot when he came in. He looks lively and looks like he's already well on track towards being himself again. Massimo Ferrin was very lively, but they kind of missed that final product, that final piece. And Coimbra's done a lot of that for them as of late.
Yeah, lots of reasons to be optimistic in Halifax, and things will continue in that vein, I will say, for Halifax. You mentioned Lorenzo Caligari. He's in the team of the week, as is Massimo Ferrin, who I thought was very good in both games this week. But for the last word on the Halifax Wanderers and this maybe up and down week for them, let's go back there and hear from Patrice Geyser.
It's been a difficult challenge, and you could tell our legs are a little bit gone. In a matter of 8 days, we've gone to Vancouver, to Halifax, and back to Calgary. So, for me, one of the biggest worries is these players' health and, injuries. But, I give the guys a lot of credit. They managed to turn it around. Around 30th, we hit the post, they hit the post. Callum had a sitter, and then the kind of game it looked like it died. And, somebody has to lose, unfortunately, sometimes. And it was difficult to digest that, especially since it's a 90th minute own goal. You can't get the story worse, but we've been on the other side where we won it last minute. So you got to appreciate that, look to move forward and get past it. But, you leave a little bit behind, hoping maybe you at least take a point, but you didn't, and you learn and get prepared for next Saturday.
Also, sorry to Finn in the chat, who I know did not enjoy watching that foggy game in Halifax as a Pacific fan, but most of the neutrals did. I'm sorry. Well, up next for these teams, Halifax, they're going back home. They're hosting Cavalry, Ottawa. They're hosting Atletico Ottawa. I don't know how I have it written down and still got it wrong, but that's on Saturday. Cavalry, on the other hand, they're going out to Langley to play Vancouver FC in their first trip to that stadium since that home opener, as we mentioned earlier in the show. Now, we've got about 10 minutes left here in the show, and we are going to have some fun. We're going to put some guys on the spot. So let's bring the whole gang back onto the screen here. Mitchell, Benedict, AGR. All right, guys, every team is through at least 15 games of the 2023 season. We didn't do this last week because not everybody had hit 14 or there's midweek games a little busier, but I think it's about time that we check in on some of the Canadian Premier League awards and where we stand at the moment. So we'll go around the table for each of these awards. You get maximum a sentence to justify your pick. Unless it's a really bad one, in which case we'll give you a second one. And I hope that everyone in the chat is taking notes. And again, as a couple of you already have, but everybody else, feel free to send in your own picks for these awards and see which one of us you line up with the best. So let's start in goal with the Golden Glove. Won last year, obviously, by Marco Carducci. This year, plenty of good candidates. Let's start with Benedict.
I went for Ryan Yesley. He's been in form. He leads the league in clean sheets and saves, I believe, and he looks like the best goalkeeper so far this season.
Ryan Yesley is a good pick. I think he was AGR's preseason pick, if I'm not mistaken. AGR, are you sticking with that, or do you have another one?
I'm sticking with Yesley, and for me, the one stat I'll give out is he saved almost 6 goals above expected for the advanced metrics. No one else in the league has more than one. He's been the clear favorite by a good amount.
It's a good pick. Mitchell?
Yeah, and I think my dog just agreed too. So we're either 3 for 4 or 4 for 5. I don't know. We're working on it right now, but yes, Ryan Yesley.
Ryan Yesley. All right. For the sake of being different, I'm going to go with Tristan Henry, I think, who I think has quietly actually had a very good season in the pipes for Forge, and I think it's about time. Moving on a little further up the pitch, let's go to the defenders. Last year, won by Alex Ashinoda Jonsson at Forge. Benedict, who have you got for that award so far this year?
I've got Amir Didic from Pacific FC. I thought he had a shot at winning it last year. Obviously didn't, but I think this might be the year he finally gets his hand on that award.
Great shout. AGR?
Yeah, I think it's Didic. He's held off a bit of a surge from Daniel Nimick, but I think Didic has been on the best defense, in terms of statistics. It's been Pacific, and Didic has been a key leader at both ends of the pitch.
I certainly agree with that. Mitchell, how about you?
Well, this is boring. I also have Didic.
All right,
4
guys.
goals as a center back. Like, he's hard not to pick considering what he's already been doing defensively, like a set piece menace to say the least at both ends of the field. It's got to be Didic.
Yeah, you guys are boring, so we're gonna have to get a little bit less obvious here soon. But you know what? Didic is a very good shout, and I think probably the front runner for me at the moment. But AGR mentioned him. I'm gonna go with Dan Nimick as well in Halifax. I think that this could be a really, really big second half of the season for him in the center of defense in Halifax. So I'm excited to see how his progress comes. And there's other guys that we can shout out too, though. I mean, Mandrakar James has been really good at Forge. He's had some injuries and some suspensions, but he'll be back and he'll be really good. Diego Espejo is always very good for Atletico Ottawa. Anyway,
Paris G
is a fantastic
that's
shout.
That's a good shout, yeah.
That's a tremendous shout. So, yeah, I don't
Played
think
every
any of these...
position, so I don't know what award category
he's a true defender.
Yeah.
Fullback, center back.
He has done a lot of defending this year as well, so he's been in every position. So, a great shout. All right, our third award. Let's go to the under-21 Canadian Player of the Year. Last year it was Sean Rea. He's killing it in Montreal at the moment. Who, for you guys, is the young player that has really made an impact so far this season? Starting again with Benedict.
I have Gote Intigne of Cavalry FC. I think he's been really good so far this season. He's eaten up a lot of their minutes and been an offensive spark for them. And I think he'll have a big second half of the season as well, even with Akio coming in.
AGR, do you have the same pick or something else?
I have Mateo Debrienne. I think despite the injury, he's probably been the most consistent, which is kind of remarkable because the fun thing about the U21 awards is they're U21 players. So it's something where they can have fantastic games and then, not so good games. And I think Debrienne's consistency at a good level is kind of edged it for me. But there's some good choices.
Absolutely. Mitchell, how about you?
Yeah, I think Debrienne for the first half of the season. I think it will get very interesting over the second half, though, because there's, like AJR said, there's so many guys, a Coimbra, Jean-Daniel SC, who are right there and thereabouts. That's just two of there's probably a 6-horse race right now for the U21 Player of the Year award, but I'll go with Debrienne for the first half of the season, and same thing, consistency.
Yeah, and there's been a couple shout outs in the chat from Arthur for Gabriel Antonoro, and I think that's a good shout as well, especially the way he's played recently with his goal scoring. I think a month ago, I would have said that Mateo Debrienne was absolutely running away with it, and it wasn't even close. Intégné's definitely making this a bit of a competition. I think there are definitely going to be a lot more candidates for this than I maybe expected there to be, because I thought Mateo was going to run away with it. But as long as Mateo's not super injured after that game in Forge on Saturday, I think he's still got to be my choice. He's been fantastic this year for Valour. All right. We've got 2 more to go. Got one of the more controversial, I think, awards in recent memory, but the Coach of the Year, I think that it may remain controversial. But Benedict, where are you going for Coach of the Year?
Yeah, the form has dipped a little bit recently, but I think so far it has to be James Merriman. I think he's been, I think his team's been far away the best so far this season, and I expect that to continue.
AGR, do you have the same answer?
Yeah, I'd say Merriman. I think it's something where just in terms of the numbers, in terms of performances, in terms of everything, he's managed everything very well. And even in those moments where they've slumped, like the first 3 games of the year, even the recent 3 games, the performances have been well, and I think they'll turn it around quick.
I have a feeling this one might end up unanimous, but Mitchell?
Yeah, no, I think all the guys made some great points. It's got to be James Merriman for, the first half.
Yeah, and I think I've been impressed with James's kind of evolution as a coach himself this year. We've spoken on this podcast about how he's started to evolve in terms of his mid-game adjustments, his ability to bring players off the bench and change games tactically. I think that Pacific have been an evolving team this year under his guidance, and I think that that's been really cool to see from a younger, a Vancouver Island-born head coach in the Canadian Premier League. Certainly candidates that could go on a run here and take it. I think Patrice Geyser is probably the closest for me, the next best option, especially considering how new that team was together. And if they do go on a run and make the playoffs, I wouldn't be surprised if Patrice is up there at the end of the year. Obviously, Cavalry playing very well at the moment. Tommy Wilden Jr., we could see if Ottawa goes on another run. Carlos Gonzalez is trying to defend his trophy. But again, I think you guys are right, and James Merriman is pretty far in front just at the moment, at least. All right, the big one, though, the final one, and I think hopefully the one with the fewest, or the one without maybe a runaway pick. I guess we'll see. We'll find out. But Player of the Year for you guys, last year it was Ollie Bassett. We've had 3 other players. I don't know why I would say there'd be a lot of other players, because there's one every year. But
well, 2 now with the new Player of the Year, right?
There are. That's right. It was the same player last year, but we may end up, players may end up voting differently than the Player of the Year award this year. That would be truly fascinating to me, and maybe it would be a lot of fun. But Player of the Year, Benedict, you are not a player. You are a member of the media. Who are you picking?
I'm going to say there will not be a 5th new member. I'm going to say Ollie Bassett's going to win it for a second time in a row. I think he's been consistently very, very good from game 1 to game 14 or game 15. And he makes that team tick. And if they go on a run and make the playoffs and play as well as they can, I think he'll be the front runner for that award.
AGR?
I have Eamon Salouf. I think just for the first half, he's been explosive, and the numbers speak for itself. I have Salouf, but Bassett is very close. And funnily enough, I have him edging the Player of the Year, because I just think, players love the reputation, the consistency, and Bassett's brought a lot of that. But I think in terms of just Salouf, he's been an MVP, but he's also brought a bit of that flash, a bit of that pizzazz. And I think that's made him so fun to watch as well.
I like that pick, and I think we'll hopefully see a lot more from him over the last few months of the season, and he definitely will at least be in the conversation come the end of the year. Mitchell, how about you?
You kind of stitch me up here by going third every time. I'm always taking someone else's answer, but
that's where you're supposed to think on the fly here and come up with something else.
I know, but I got to stick with Ollie Bassett. He's almost already scored as many goals as he did last year in his Player of the Year campaign. He's got 10 goal contributions. He just been consistently their best player every match this season, and yeah, I think he's even taken the next step, and obviously he was the Player of the Year last year. So I've been very impressed with Ollie.
I think just in the interest of having a few more names come around here, I might ask you guys for some honorable mentions, because I think that there are a lot of players that at least deserve conversation in this stretch, because I think at the moment it is probably Ollie Bassett for me as well, although I think my second might actually be Ali Musi, who has had a really good first half of the season, and I think can really, really turn it on in that team as they continue to click tactically and to find, exactly what is the best way to get the best out of Ali. But I think maybe we'll go. Do you want to go reverse order around the table?
Yes, fine.
You guys, because Mitchell complained about it. Let's go in reverse order and let's get just throw some names out there. Tell me other guys that you think could be in that conversation come October. Mitchell.
He's already won a Player of the Month, but maybe Sean Young out in Pacific. Another player who is playing for a great team and fits very well into that system. So I'll go with Sean Young. Should be in that conversation.
I love that. I absolutely think that that's right, and I think that he is just unfortunately too old to be under 21 Player of the Year because he would be running away with that as well. AGR, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to shout out Musi because I picked him in my preseason MVP pick, so I'm riding that one to the bank. I got my odds on that one, so I wouldn't hate if that one came true, of course. But to throw in another name, I'm going to throw Lorenzo Caligari. I just think it's something where, he's not a striker, he's not a forward, he's not going to get all the goal contributions, although he has 4 assists, just kind of impressive. But just the way he's so important to that Halifax team. If they stay hot and they got a lot of home games, they can push up the table. He's someone who I think's name could really slip in. I think that'd be fascinating because it'd be cool to see number 6 in this race.
All right, final couple of names, Benedict.
Yeah, I'll say Terran Campbell. I think he's been pretty good so far. If the forwards go on a run and they keep going and he starts putting the ball in the back of the net even more consistently, he could be in that conversation. And while I don't think a goalkeeper is going to win, I'll put Ryan Nestle's name in there. Why not? He's been absolutely crucial to that team. And if they have any success, it's going to be with him playing very, very well.
Fair enough. That's a good shout. I mean, if Valour do go on a run, I could also see Diego Gutierrez getting in there. Again, hoping that he's fit and healthy after coming off on Saturday. And again, I don't really want to make you guys pick who's going to win the Golden Boot because, we don't know who's going to score goals, but Terran Campbell in the lead by just 1, maybe should have been 2, but in the lead by 1 at the moment. So as we just wrap up the podcast quickly here, let's bring up the standings as they are right now. Pacific, again, still in front, but not by as much as they were a couple weeks ago, just 2 points up on Cavalry. And they don't have that game in hand on them anymore as well. Forge right there behind them in third. And then, lots of teams still involved in that playoff race. York kind of in fifth there, but just 2 points up on Halifax, who definitely will be hoping to get back into that picture as we have another 4 entertaining games this week. And we can bring up the schedule for that too. We start on Friday, as we've mentioned, at Starlight Stadium in Langford. Pacific FC taking on Forge FC, 7 Pacific, 10 Eastern, followed by on Saturday, Halifax hosting Atletico Ottawa on Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern, 4 o'clock Atlantic time. And then Saturday's doubleheader, that Halifax game, by the way, the Tony Bet match of the week, we do have to say, followed closely in Langley by Vancouver FC taking on Cavalry, also on Saturday, 4 o'clock Pacific time, that's 7 o'clock Eastern. And then, as we have mentioned earlier, Valour hosting York in Winnipeg for the final game of the weekend. That's Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central Time. 4 games, all available to watch live on One Soccer. And we will speak to you again sometime next week.
Cavalry counter. It's Camargo from Bevan. 3-1 gets down. Over the top, Chalop, variety Chalop. Garcia, fake the cross shot, but it's a cross and it's perfect. Up and finishing it off is Alejandro Diaz, who scores in his Vancouver debut. Karen Campbell can do no wrong. And the Spaniard makes them pay. It's Fisk. Up goes Beckford, bounces around, and it's in! Cavalry in stoppage time! And win this match by a goal to nil and go second in the Canadian Premier League table.